This video covers the concept of depreciation. In general maths, we're covering 3 different types of depreciation that we will go through in this video. So firstly, starting off, what is depreciation? So essentially, as soon as you purchase an item, the value of that item begins to decrease. This course covers the loss in value of these items as they're getting older or as they're being used. So over time, an item will eventually reach a low point, and at that point, it's deemed to be at scrap value, and at that point, we would write the item off. So the terminology scrap value and written off are things that will pop up from time to time. Just keep in mind throughout this, scrap value and written off is basically talking about when an item has reached a point in time where it's no longer being able to be depreciated. So what is depreciation? Essentially, businesses use depreciation methods to claim tax on their assets each year, and then you can get some more money back on your tax at tax time. So an example of this might be, I have a car that I use in my business. Obviously, I buy the car for a certain price. At the end of a year, it's lost value, as we know, as we use stuff, or as time goes on, stuff loses value. So say I had my car, and say it lost $5,000 in value over that year, and I was using it for a business, I could claim some of that $5,000 back and get some of it potentially back in my tax. So this course doesn't really cover a lot about the tax implications of depreciation, but instead it covers what depreciation types there might be that you could use potentially in the future. So the first type that we will look at is flat rate depreciation. Flat rate depreciation involves an item depreciating by the same dollar amount every year. Okay, so flat rate depreciation is about time, and it's based on the initial value of the item, and it's losing that same amount of depreciation every year. So if you want to link this back to one of our types of interest, we can link it back to simple interest. So simple interest, you were figuring out how much interest was accruing every time period based on the initial value of the loan or the investment. With flat rate depreciation, we're looking at how much value an item is losing based on how much that item was worth initially. Okay, we're going to use a really similar formula when we to the simple interest formula when we talk about flat rate interest in better depth. The next type is unit cost depreciation. Instead of losing value over time, unit cost depreciation calculates depreciation based on how often something's being used. So rather than saying every year my car's losing $5,000 in value, I might instead say it's going to lose, say, 20 cents per kilometre that I drive it. Or I might say the frying pan is losing 10 cents in value every time I use that frying pan. Okay, it's based on how often you are using something. The third type of depreciation that we look at is reducing balance depreciation. So I'll move my little head, just give me a sec. Reducing balance depreciation, an item is depreciating by a fixed percentage as it gets older. So this is still based on age. So as time goes on, you are losing value. That loss in value is based on the previous year's value of the item. So if you're going to try and link this to an interest, this is kind of like compound interest, where you're not calculating it based on the initial value, you are calculating it based on the previous year's value. So the decrease in value every time period will be different every single year, okay, because you're looking at what it was worth the previous term, and then using that previous term to calculate the new value of it at the end of the next year. Okay, so it's a basic intro to all three. We are going to go over these in greater depth in the next few videos. Okay, so I will leave it there for now, and we will go on to the next video, and that will cover flat rate depreciation.